How have your breeding programs with the gharial been working?
Well, both our rather small breeding program as well as the much, much larger government breeding programs were incredibly successful initially. And it was touted as being one of the conservation success stories, the idea that putting several thousands of gharial back into the ecosystem would bring them back. But it was a little short-sighted in the sense that the other factors, mitigating the problems between the humans and the crocodilians, was never addressed. And holding on to the integrity, protecting the riverine ecosystem itself was never really addressed. So just dumping a bunch of animals back into a river isn't the way to go. So we're reassessing this now, and in the light of the recent gharial die-off, there was a very tragic die-off this last winter in which over 113 animals died initially of what we'd call mysterious causes, but turned out to be, with the help of international veterinary assistance from the Crocodile Specialist Group, it was identified that a nephrotoxin is destroying their kidneys and creating gout, and these animals were dying. Gout, of course, affects both the viscera as well as the joints, and these things were not able to move. They weren't able to get out and bask. And the river temperatures are pretty low at that time. They are down to 15 degrees centigrade. The air temperature is as low as 3 degrees centigrade. And for a crocodilian, they got to get out and bask, they got to get warm. So this die-off precipitated a lot of movement on the part of the government. We always kind of criticize governments wherever we are, right? So well, in this case, we said, well, finally the Indian government, the forest departments are really behind us now and encouraging us to get into the research mode and to start conservation projects based on good science as far as the gharial is concerned.
How many gharials would you estimate are still out there in the wild today?
Actually, we have fairly good figures on numbers of gharial. When we made up when we addressed the possibility that these that the gharial should be uplisted in the Red Data Book to critically endangered in the year 2006 and 2007, we based it on the very accurate counts being undertaken by the various state forest departments, and we came up with a figure of less than 200 breeding adults, and with a total of perhaps about between 1,000 and 1,400 animals in the wild.
That's not a lot of animals to work with.
It's not, and it's particularly critical because there are actually, in India, there were only 4 sites where they were actually still breeding, and one site in one site in Nepal. The reason I said Pakistan, because I was just sort of thinking ahead, the fact that it's pretty an eye-opener that the gharial, which used to be in Pakistan, Bhutan, and Bangladesh and Burma, are now extinct in those countries. So Nepal is the only country besides India that has a small population of gharial left.
What makes the gharial so much different than most of the other crocodilians that people are familiar with?
Well, you probably know that the gharial is a monotypic family. It's actually a family Gavialidae, and it's the most unique of all the crocodilians in the sense that it's besides being a river specialist, it's a fish specialist, and they virtually eat nothing but fish, although we have seen them taking crustaceans as well. Basically, you try to feed a gharial a rat or a bird or something like that, and he may grab it at first, but then spit it out. Yeah, it's not a fish, I don't like it. So they're equipped, as you can see, and especially the young ones, with the longest, weirdest jaws you can imagine. And people have come up with names like the croc from Mars, because they're just such a weird-looking, almost cartoonish character. But look at that structure, and look at how uniform the teeth are, and how well it's built for being able to quickly snap fish underwater. And you'll see that it's very similar to the jaw structure of garfish and some of the dolphins, some of the other typical fish-eating animals we have on the planet.
How did you get involved in crocodilians and in reptiles in general?
I guess I was born with it. I mean, in India, they always, talk about reincarnations and stuff like that. So I've been told by various old sages and shamans that, yeah, you were either a reptile in your former life or you were doing the same thing in your former life and you just got reborn to keep doing it. I don't know. I don't really believe in much of that stuff, but I do know that my mother says that when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was already out there picking up snakes. And luckily it was in a part of New York State where I grew up for my first 7 years that didn't have any venomous ones. Otherwise, we may not be talking right now. But I was taken off to India by my stepfather, who is Indian, and my mother in 1951 when I was 7. And man, you know, that was really the start of it, because maybe I had started with garter snakes and decay snakes and stuff like that in New York State, but suddenly I was in the land of cobras and vipers and king cobras. And again, I'm probably a lucky lad not to have gotten nailed or something, because, you know, kids are a little bit dumb about things like that.
Your presentation had an awful lot of photos of people with cobras and dealing with cobras. How often do you run across cobras over there?
Well, actually, my wife and I live outside of the city of Madras, or called Chennai now, on the southeast coast of India. And on our farm, we find all the so-called big four venomous snakes of India: saw-scale vipers, cobras, kraits, and especially Russell's vipers. These are very, very dangerous snakes, the Russell's viper in particular. And we do some limited sort of translocation. I mean, I'm very, very aware that taking a snake and plonking it in some distant place is just about like picking one of us up and plonking us in the middle of Iraq during wartime or something like that. The snake doesn't have a chance, or have very little chance, of surviving that kind of translocation. So basically, when we take a snake away from our garden, we put it in the nearby scrub jungle, not too far away from its sort of territory. But it's basically a rule of thumb. It's a strict rule for all of us and for the people around us to walk around at night with a flashlight, because that's when most of the bites happen. We find cobras quite often because we're adjacent to a scrub jungle where the Russells live, and we're adjacent to rice fields on the other side. So you could say we're on the snake highway, because the rice fields are full of rats, and naturally the cobras gravitate toward anywhere there's plenty of rats.
What can people here in the U.S. and in Canada and North America do to help the gharial and help your organization save the gharial?
Well, we've got a lot of different programs, as I mentioned earlier, of doing research on, well, I should say it's research, conservation, and education all the way through. And these different programs are obviously have to be funded. And we really try very hard to be self-supporting in everything we do, because going around with the begging bowl is actually a very, very time-consuming activity, and we've got to spend much more time out there in the field doing it. So thanks to organizations like your own, like kingsnake.com, thanks to Reptiles magazine, thanks to, you know, all the people who are interested in the documentaries we produce and stuff like that, we're getting a lot of inputs in terms of financial help. We've got a paying volunteer program where people come over and gain experience with reptiles, working with us. They pay to do it. It's not a great amount of money for them, but they're gaining the experience of coming to India and having a really good time. But at the same time, they're contributing to what we do.
Well, Rom, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us today. I know that you're anxious to get back to your crocs. You're going to be back over this summer, though, aren't you? You're coming back over for the National Reptile Breeders Expo in Daytona, aren't you?
That's right. My wife and I will be there. And basically, the motivation for that was the very kind offer by Wayne Hill and his team that the auction, the very, very famous auction at the Reptile Expo, will be to benefit the gharial conservation. So, man, I feel really good about that.
Well, thank you very much for taking time with us, and we'll see you in August.
See you. Thanks very much.